What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today's video, you're gonna learn something. You're gonna learn something about Shaka Zulu, and you're gonna learn what went missing or what the world lost after Shaka Zulu was killed. Because one thing that, and I talk about it in my videos, but no one talks about the tactical mind of Shaka Zulu and the Zulus. You gotta understand, when I was in the Marine Corps, as an infantryman, we actually had to train and study Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu and his war tactics are recognized even in the highest and most specialized echelons of the American military. His tactics are used currently today by the Marine Corps to shock and awe the enemy. Right, that's how good Shaka Zulu was. All right, Shaka Zulu started off with a band of warriors, 1,500 strong. All right, and end up with a 50,000 man military, controlling what could be considered an empire. All right, empires is a collection of kingdoms controlled by an emperor. For the most part, you have different kingdoms. You have kingdoms, you got empire. Empire controls kingdoms. Kingdoms just control their kingdom, right? But Shaka Zulu and his military tactical prowess, one thing he never did, he never as much of a genius as he was, he didn't pass any of his knowledge down, particularly down to any groups of people, right? So when he died, all his tactics, all his strategies went with him. Except for those who observed and studied him, there was no way to pass down these tactics. And had he done that, maybe South Africa will look a little different today. But history is what it is, and it happened the way it happened, and we can't change it. But there's still time today for us to appreciate and learn about the things Shaka Zulu did, right? Because it's important that we know, who our tactical generals were. Just like we know who Napoleon is, we should know who Shaka Zulu is, and we should know more about Shaka Zulu, other than the movies that were presented or the propaganda pieces that were put out against white supremacy, who view him and people like him as the enemy, especially the fact that he himself can inspire, other revolutionary leaders within the African diaspora to imitate him in many different ways, whether imitate his tactics, within the corporate setting, political setting, or on the battlefield. They don't want us to absorb the history and knowledge of our ancestors who came before us and did great things against great powers. But anyway, without further ado, just learn a little bit about Shaka Zulu, and his tactics and the things that we lost that we can regain again, because we do have the power to resurrect past information and knowledge that we once created and lost. Anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. This is Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
When Shaka Zulu was assassinated in 1828, something extraordinary disappeared from the world. And I'm not talking about the man. To understand what I mean, you have to start at the beginning, because the standard version of the story skips the part that actually matters. Shaka was born around 1787, the same decade Napoleon was rising in Europe. The same decade the American Constitution was being ratified. While these events were unfolding on the other side of the world, in the eastern coastal region of what is now South Africa, a child was born, illegitimate, rejected by his father's clan, raised in exile with a mother the community had already decided to humiliate. That child would go on to build one of the most formidable military machines in the history of the African continent, starting with fewer than 1,500 people. Let that land for a second. Fewer than 1,500. By the time of his death, he commanded over 50,000 warriors and governed 250,000 people. He didn't inherit an empire. He engineered one from the ground up, using ideas nobody around him had thought to try. The traditional weapon of the region was long meant for throwing, a weapon that kept you at a distance from your enemy. Shaka replaced it with something shorter, broader bladed, built for close combat. He called it the Ikawa. The name comes from the sound it made when pulled from the body. That tells you something about how he thought about war, not as ceremony, but as conclusion. He reorganized the entire army by age. Young men were grouped into regiments, not by clan loyalty, not by family connection, but by generation. They trained together, they lived together, developed identity together. This wasn't just military efficiency, it was social engineering. He was building loyalty to something larger than tribe. And then he invented a battlefield formation that military historians still study today. The bullhorn, Impondo Zankomo in Zulu. a chest to engage the enemy directly, two horns sweeping wide to encircle, a reserve held back, ready to plug any gap, elegant, disciplined, devastating. Historians have compared it to the tactics of Roman legions. One called him the Black Napoleon, not as a diminishment, but as a scale reference. This was not a regional leader managing a small territory. This was a military and organizational mind that commanded the attention of the British Empire, which 50 years after his death still found the Zulu army a serious military problem. So that's who we're talking about. That's what he built. Now here's the part nobody talks about. In 1828, Shaka was assassinated by his own half-brothers. And within a decade, 10 years, almost everything he built was gone. Not defeated from the outside, unraveled from within. His successor, Dingani, inherited the throne, the army, the territory, and proceeded to lose all of it. Not because he was uniquely incompetent, but because what Shaka had built wasn't really a system. It was an extension of one man's mind. And that man was gone. The military innovations survived in form, but the strategic intelligence behind them, the instinct for when and how to deploy them, the vision of what they were building toward, that died in September of 1828 in a grain pit where Shaka's body was hastily buried. This is where most people reach for the obvious conclusion. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. The tyrant falls. The kingdom collapses. Lesson learned. But that framing misses the actual failure. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's a real observation. It describes what power does to the person who holds it. And yes, Shaka's later years were erratic, brutal, paranoid. That part is true. But that's not the structural failure I'm pointing to. The structural failure is this. Shaka never converted what he knew into something anyone else could carry. Every insight he had, the close combat logic of the Ikawa, the encirclement geometry of the bullhorn, the social cohesion built through the regimental system, all of it lived in him. He could deploy it, he could command it, but he never built the institutional layer beneath it, never translated instinct into principle, never gave anyone else the why, which is the only part that lets you adapt when conditions change. And here's the mechanism worth understanding, because this isn't unique to Shaka, and it isn't unique to ancient kingdoms. Every person with genuine mastery eventually faces a choice. Do you convert what you know into something transferable? Something others can learn, adapt, carry forward? Or do you hold it, keep it yours? That choice feels personal, but it has structural consequences. When you institutionalize what you know, when you build the principle beneath the instinct, teach it, let others stress test it, you give up a certain kind of irreplaceability. You are no longer the only one who can do this. And for people whose sense of worth is tied to being the only one, that trade feels like self-erasure. So they don't make it. And what gets lost isn't just their legacy. What gets lost is the compounding. The next person who could have taken that foundation and built something greater, they never get the foundation. They start over. Or they inherit a pale imitation of what they don't fully understand. This is the cost that doesn't show up in the obituary. It shows up a decade later when everything that looked like an institution turns out to have been a person, and the person is gone. Shaka Zulu was one of the most brilliant military and organizational minds of his era, on any continent, by any measure. And it's only through the long view of history that we can fully appreciate what he could have delivered to his people, if any of it had been built to outlast him. The extraordinary thing that disappeared in 1828 wasn't just a king. It was everything he never taught anyone else to build.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such an extent that you bleach? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan.
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.